My name is Fabiola Escalon, and this is the Rio Grande on Substack. And today I'm with Vikki Goodwin. She is in a runoff for lieutenant governor in the Democratic ticket, and I'm very excited to have her here with me. We have some questions, and welcome.
Thank you, Fabiola. It's so good to be here.
I'm going to go ahead and get started right away. Vikki, you're currently in the runoff election for Texas lieutenant governor. For voters who are just now tuning in, what does that mean and what's at stake in this race?
So, the lieutenant governor is a very powerful position in Texas. Some would argue it's the most powerful position. And this is a big deal. And I am running because after 30 years of Republican leadership, we need a change. Our public schools are underfunded. We have a broken healthcare system. Affordability is a huge issue, as is water. And those are the things I want to focus on. Our current leadership is not focusing on the right things. So that's why I'm running.
Thank you for that. I always say I learned about the power of the lieutenant governor when I was in college. You advanced to the runoff with a strong share of the vote. Why do you think voters are choosing you as one of the final two candidates, and what message is that sending?
Yeah, so I got over 1 million votes, and that's historic. It was 48% though. I have to get over 50% to win. So I am in a runoff against another Democrat. And really, we have a lot of the same values and a lot of the same policy priorities, but the real difference is experience. I ran for the first time in 2018, beat an incumbent Republican at that time, and I'm ready to beat a Republican incumbent this time. Dan Patrick.
Yes, your opponent has also framed experience and priorities in different ways. Why are you the more qualified candidate to serve as the Texas lieutenant governor?
Yeah, so again, this is a very powerful position, and it really requires somebody that knows how the legislature operates. The lieutenant governor selects senators to be on each of the committees and the leadership of each of those committees. And if you have the right leaders on the committees, we'll get our policies passed. But if you don't, then it could really gum up the system. The lieutenant governor has a lot of influence also on the budget, how our money is spent, how your public tax dollars are spent. And so it's really a very influential position. And I think a lot of times people don't connect the dots to how that person, that position, the lieutenant governor, can impact their daily life, but it really can.
Absolutely. So what specific experience would you say has prepared you to lead immediately on day one?
Again, it's that experience in the legislature. I have passed laws with my fellow House members and with senators. I have worked with senators throughout the state. In fact, Senator Zaffarini and I passed a drowning prevention bill. Senator Alvarado and I passed a violence prevention bill. Senator West and I passed a bill around food resiliency. So having those relationships will be incredibly helpful as lieutenant governor. I know what area of expertise the different senators have, and we will have a great working relationship from day one so that we can get our Democratic priorities passed. I've also done 2 quorum breaks with my fellow Democrats in the House, and so I have very strong relationships with many of the members.
That's very good to hear. But how would you get things done in this very divided political environment?
Yeah, it's not easy, but I have served 4 terms in the minority party. And so I have learned a lot of strategies. It's really finding where we can come together in consensus. For example, there are Republicans who don't agree with the vouchers and understand that we are underfunding our public schools.
Mhm.
And I think they want to increase funding, but they have been stymied by the lieutenant governor, Dan Patrick. I think that there are Republicans who know that we have a broken healthcare system. We have the highest rate of maternal mortality. We have the highest rate of uninsured. In a state that is as prosperous as Texas, that
Right.
is not acceptable. And so I think there are a lot of senators, including mostly Democrats, but also Republicans, who see how we must do better to support the people in Texas.
That's right. Well, I mean, it would be a better place if we got along better, right? Um, Campaign life, if I can take a break. What's the funniest and most unexpected thing you've experienced on the campaign trail so far?
The campaign trail is always an experience. I love traveling around the state of Texas and talking to people in other parts of the state. And sometimes, that people are very, they want their area to be pronounced a certain way. And just the
Yes.
other night, I was in Baytown. Baytown area Democrats hosted me for an event, and I accidentally said Bay Area Democrats, and they said, "Oh no, it's Baytown." So,
That's different.
very important to get the name of the town correct.
That's true. That's true. If you go to my little county, where I'm from, I live in McAllen. I'm going to be living here for forever, retired. But if you go to my little county of Zapata, people say Zapata. Any other way, it sounds foreign. So yeah, Zapata. When you go,
Zapata.
yes, Zapata. Campaigning is intensive. I have so much respect for people that are going through the campaign. Constant travel, long days, tough conversations. How do you stay grounded, and what gives you energy? What keeps you energized? What keeps you going?
I would say it's family and it's colleagues and my staff. So my family, obviously, my kids are grown and out of the home, but my son just had a child, so my first grandchild,
Your
and
grandma.
I get pictures from them every day. They live in Pennsylvania, so they're not just around the corner where I can visit them anytime, but they do send a lot of pictures and videos of the baby.
Oh,
Um, my husband travels with me a lot of the time, so he is often my driver. And so that gives us an opportunity to spend time together,
hmm,
um, and together as we're driving around the state. And then
right.
I have a great staff and colleagues in the house. So, we have lots of conversations about the challenges and just how critically important it is that we have a change of leadership.
All right. So voting access. Moving on. Um, well, public education. Let me go to that. You mentioned the vouchers. Public education is a major concern everywhere in the state of Texas. I don't know that if it's more so here in South Texas, here in the Valley. Beyond the voucher debate, what are the biggest structural issues you see in Texas schools right now? Um, how can you help with those vouchers? Can you
Yeah.
repeat? Had interviewed you in the past, and you mentioned something that I had no idea. And this is why I do what I do. I want to educate people. I want people to hear what candidates have to say. I want them to learn what the positions actually do. What does a lieutenant governor do?
So many of our school districts around the state are dealing with budget deficits. They've got to figure out how to cut their budget. And oftentimes that means cutting programs, or it means cutting staff. It means closing down schools. It means doing things that really aren't in the best interest of our students.
Mhm.
Um, I hear a lot of stories. I had high schoolers who reached out to me and said, "Would you please bring back our IB program, the International Baccalaureate program?" And of course, I want them to have the programs that they are there in school that get them excited and get them to want to learn. And so it's really unfortunate when school districts have to cut those programs. There's also a lot of school districts are going to 4-day school weeks. And we just had the Texas Education Agency commissioners say that it looks like test results are showing that is not good for our students. So unfortunately, the underfunding is having tangible impacts, and we've got to turn that around. We have money in the state of Texas. We underspent what we could have last budget cycle by $4 billion. That's some money that could have gone to our public schools, making sure that we're keeping class sizes small enough so that teachers can manage their students.
Mhm.
Often when your class gets really large, it's hard for the teacher to manage. I've also heard from a lot of teachers who feel like they're unsupported when they have a behavioral issue in the
Mhm.
classroom. And we've got to figure that out because I hear it too often. And at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. We want our kids to be able to learn, to read well, to write well, to know how to do math. And when we see the scores are decreasing, we should be looking into that and figuring out how do we do better for our schools.
Something that I've been reading about recently is about the AI curriculum. That's not going very well. I'm a teacher, 20 plus years experience, and I want to go back to regular textbooks. Forget computers, forget phones. They're so there's such a big distraction, and now AI involved. I can't. I couldn't do it anymore. It's like I can't do this.
Mhm.
But anyway, I'm glad. I hope the teachers are paying attention. This is a very important race, and the right candidate is very, very important to put on the ballot for November. Talking about teachers, I left teaching because of the issues. So many issues. Many are leaving the profession at high rates. What
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
What are your priorities to stabilize pay, morale, and classroom conditions? What can you do as a lieutenant governor, Vikki?
So the lieutenant governor can make sure that the school funding formula that we pass works for our school district. So let me give you an example there. In the last budget cycle, we created a teacher incentive allotment that not every school district participates in it.
Mhm.
And so there's teachers who are being left out of getting raises when they deserve them.
Mhm.
And so we need to make our school funding formula less complicated and leave it up to our school district superintendents, principals to make the decisions that they know are right to make sure that they're paying their teachers what will keep them in the profession. So many of the people in our classrooms aren't certified. They're
Mhm.
not certified teachers. And so then we see the issues that maybe they haven't been taught how to manage a classroom. And that goes back to we aren't incentivized, we aren't making it an attractive job. And
Mhm.
we've got to make sure that we are making it an attractive job. It's one of the most important jobs out there.
Absolutely. In the last interview, you said something about vouchers. You would be able to stop funding for vouchers. Can you explain that again?
Yeah, so the lieutenant governor has a lot of influence on what goes in the budget, and I've made the commitment that I won't pass a budget that has any money going towards vouchers.
Okay. Teachers, Vikki Goodwin here. Listen up, pay attention. On voting access, Texas voters are often they face confusion and barriers around voting rules. We are one of the most suppressed states when it comes to voting, but there's also a big structural issue. Talking about structures again, gerrymandering, and how districts are drawn and redrawn, and not waiting for the census year. How do you see that role? How do you see the role of the lieutenant governor in addressing fair representation? And what supports could you make once you're in office?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, we saw with Trump saying that he deserved 5 additional Republican seats here in Texas, that Texas said, the governor and lieutenant governor said, fine, we'll redraw our district. So I want not just a state law, but I would like to see a federal law that says you can only redistrict once every 10 years within 2 years of the census, because that's why we redraw our district, because population has changed. We need to know the census numbers. We need to base our districts on that. So I'd like 3 things in the law to say that you can only redistrict one time every decade within 2 years of the census, that you can't use partisanship to draw the lines, and
Mhm.
that you have independent redistricting commission. It shouldn't be up to us as legislators to draw our own lines.
That's great. We need to get you there, Vikki. Here in the Rio Grande Valley, water scarcity is becoming one of the most urgent issues in South Texas. What should state leadership be doing differently right now to address long-term water security?
You know, water is becoming an issue all over the state, particularly with the growth of data centers. But there's such a concern that, number one, it's going to drive up the cost for us as homeowners, but it's also impacting our agriculture, our farmers. And so we've got to do better planning as a state. We have this very patchwork system of groundwater districts, and we have this law called rule of capture. So if someone buys a piece of land, they can draw out all of the water underneath it.
Mhm.
There's a lot of issues around water. We did create a water fund, but it's only a small drop in the bucket in terms of the amount of money we need. And we should be spending so much time on this issue, making sure that industry that uses huge vast amounts of water, making sure we are planning for the future. We're not allowing too many data centers to come and be components to it. But overall, we just need to be spending more time on that issue, less time on some of the controversial issues.
On healthcare access, Healthcare access remains a major issue as well. And here in the border and the rural communities, it's a big issue. Why is expanding access to healthcare still one of your priorities? I was reading on your platform. How does the lieutenant governor have a say in it?
So, we have not Medicaid. So there are a lot of people who don't have the ability to go see a primary care doctor. They don't have health insurance through an employer and they don't fit the qualifications to get Medicaid. We could have expanded Medicaid to allow for more people to get their health insurance that way. But since we didn't, we are stuck in this position of having the highest rate of uninsured, and it's impacting our doctors too. But
Mm-hmm.
I would create our own state health plan for kind of like a risk pool for people who don't have insurance from their employer, and make sure we're putting an emphasis on preventive care, because we know that preventive care is less expensive. When somebody lets their health go, they may end up in the emergency room where it's the most expensive care. Outcomes are better when you're addressing them early on and less expensive. And so that's, my goal is to have a Texas plan that addresses prevention.
That's good. The Rio Grande Valley also is, well, we know that we're at the center of immigration debates, but it's not always represented accurately. We felt a lot of times that people were missing the real stories. How would your approach be different from current state leadership?
Okay, I'm sorry. Can you repeat that?
That in the
Immigration?
immigration, yeah, the immigration issue
Yeah.
is not
Okay.
always represented accurately.
Right.
We feel that our stories are not being told. How would you approach the current state?
So I had a lot of things going through my mind. In fact, something that I just read in the paper is that DPS may start having the ability to act like their immigration and control enforcement. Um, that's a federal responsibility, and for our local communities to feel safe, we can't have our local law enforcement detaining and deporting people. You're So right now it's very problematic. I would like us to work more collaboratively with our law enforcement along South Texas, along the border, to say, look, if there's a surge and you need help, we will help you at that point in time. But we don't need DPS to be down there all the time. We don't need Operation Lone Star all the time. We need to address it when it comes up in a collaborative manner, and working with the local law enforcement, making sure that they still have the ability to maintain good relationships with the people in South Texas.
I would imagine that troopers wouldn't want to do more. I think they have their hands full already. But um, on corruption, many people feel politicians at all levels prioritize lobbyists and donors over everyday Texans. In fact, that turns off a lot of people from voting. Down here in the valley, I hear it a lot, from school boards to city council to state and federal. What reforms would you support to reduce corruption and increase accountability? Is it in the purview of the lieutenant governor to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, another priority of mine is getting rid of corruption. And what leads to corruption is when you can give a donation of any amount. And that's what you can do in Texas. We've got to have campaign contribution limits. I tried to do that. I filed a bill to limit it to $15,000,
Mhm.
and I see that that was not going to pass. So then I said, you know what about 50 times what a congressional candidate can get? Because congressional candidates do have campaign contribution limits. Unfortunately, it didn't pass, but that is still a priority for me. When somebody can give you $100,000, $1 million, you're going to listen to that individual. You're going to pass laws that benefit that individual, or you're going to create contracts. And that's something that the governor has been able to do by declaring an emergency in Texas. We don't have to go through the bid process, and he's given a lot of donations to his buddies.
Mhm. Um, Sounds like corruption to me. For voters in South Texas who feel like state politics doesn't reflect their daily reality, why should they pay attention to this runoff? I've said it. I want them to hear from you if they don't really vote.
Well, I think we have to connect the dots for them again. The lieutenant governor has a lot of power to pass laws that impact people's everyday lives, whether it is affordability, whether it is the school that their kids go to, whether it is job opportunities. The lieutenant governor has a lot of power to make things better here in Texas, and that's my goal. The current lieutenant governor is corrupt and isn't paying attention to what the needs are of everyday Texans.
Definitely, that's what it feels like. Thank you, Vikki, Goodwin. I hope when you come down to the valley, you come in. Hopefully, I can visit with you again. We just want our community to be viewed in a more positive light, and this is why I do this to share knowledge, to educate, and to ask people to vote because that is the best way to change.
Yes, absolutely. Voting is so important. Voting is your voice, it's your power.
That's right. Thank you so much and have a good afternoon.
Thank you, Fabiola.